I was standing at the counter of my small blue house in Boston, America, when the morning that should have been quiet and ordinary turned into something sharp enough to cut through every memory I had of my family. The sun was just starting to rise, sliding one thin line of gold across the hardwood floor. My coffee cup was warm in my hands, the steam curling up like it had secrets of its own. It had been a long week at work, and all I wanted was a slow morning, a quiet one, a moment where the world felt still and gentle. But some mornings do not care what we want. Some arrive with a purpose, and this one came with the kind of news that shakes a life from the inside out. The phone rang at 8:12 a.m. sharp. I knew the number before I picked it up. Daniel West, my lawyer. He never called unless something mattered. My stomach tightened before I even pressed the green button. When I answered, I tried to sound calm, like nothing inside me was bracing for impact. He didn't waste time. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I'm sorry to drop this on you first thing in the morning, but the cottage your grandmother left you, it has been sold." I froze. The air in the room seemed to thicken. "Sold? Daniel, that's not possible. It's under my name. It's been under my name for a year." He sighed, and in that sigh, I heard the rest of the sentence before he said it out loud. "That's the problem. Your name is on the new deed, but it isn't your signature." My whole body went cold. The cottage in Norfolk, Europe, wasn't just a piece of land or a stone house with ivy. It was my grandmother's hand on my shoulder even years after she passed. It was her voice telling me I would always have a place that belonged to me, a place I could run to when life became too heavy. And now someone had taken it, quietly, boldly, like it was a simple thing to erase my place in the world. I tried to steady my voice. "Show me the document." He emailed it immediately. When I opened it, my heart dropped into my stomach. There it was. A shaky version of my signature. Not mine, but close enough to look real to someone who didn't know me. But Daniel knew. And so did I. "Who signed it?" I whispered. A pause, then the words that split the morning in half. "Your sister, Melissa." The room tilted. I gripped the counter to steady myself. I felt something inside me collapse, then rebuild itself within seconds, like a wall falling and rising again but stronger, heavier. Melissa. The child my parents adored. The one whose mistakes were brushed aside as learning moments. The one who always got second chances, third chances, endless chances. I had spent most of my life being told to understand her or be patient with her because she was going through things. Meanwhile, any time I spoke up, I was told I was too emotional, too dramatic, or misunderstanding her intentions. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a feeling. This was theft. And not a small one. Daniel kept talking, laying out facts like stepping stones across a river I didn't know I had to cross. The buyer paid $640,000. The funds were transferred to an account that is not hers, but she opened it under a business name linked to her address. I pressed my palm against my forehead, as if I could stop the pounding. "She knew it was mine," I said. "She knew exactly what she was doing." "I'm afraid so," he replied. "The forged will she used is the one your grandmother revoked 12 years ago. Your grandmother updated everything to make sure that the cottage went to you. And Melissa used the old one." I closed my eyes. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice. I could almost feel her hands on mine the night she told me she trusted me more than anyone. She said I had a kind heart but a strong one. I never fully believed her until now. "Daniel," I said softly, "what do I do?" "We fight," he said simply. "But first, we gather everything. And you need to be prepared for pushback from your family." A bitter laugh escaped me. They never pushed back at her. Only at me. "I know," he said gently. "But this time you have evidence. And the law is on your side." After the call ended, I set the phone down and stared at the window. The sun had risen higher, casting brighter light across the kitchen. My coffee had gone lukewarm. The house felt suddenly too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I thought of Melissa. I thought of the countless times she made small cuts in my life, the betrayals she wrapped in excuses, The lies she told that everyone chose to ignore because it was easier to believe she was harmless. I thought of the times I swallowed my hurt because speaking it out loud felt like shouting into a room full of people who would only tell me to lower my voice. But this time, she had gone too far. She had crossed a line she could not charm, cry, or talk her way out of. I walked to the table, picked up my notebook, and wrote one sentence across a clean page. Silence is not surrender. It is a strategy. It was something my grandmother told me once, a long time ago, when she saw how deeply my sister's words cut me. I never forgot it, but I never used it correctly. Until now. That morning, standing barefoot on the cool kitchen floor, I felt something inside me shift. A calmness, a hardness, a quiet strength that was not loud or wild. It was steady, focused, sharp. Melissa thought I would stay silent because I always had. She had no idea what silence can become when it chooses its moment. And this was mine. By the time the sun reached its highest point, I was already sitting on a train headed straight for New York City, America. The world outside my window blurred into long strokes of color, but inside me, everything felt still and sharp. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't doubting what I needed to do. Instead, I felt a cool steadiness rising through me, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. If Melissa thought I would roll over the way I always had, she was about to learn who I had become the moment she touched what belonged to me. When I stepped off the train, the familiar rush of the city wrapped around me. Horns, voices, footsteps, the constant hum of people moving with purpose. It almost gave me strength. I didn't head to my sister's townhouse first. I took a cab straight to Daniel West's office in Midtown. He had already texted me saying he found more than expected. That sentence alone had kept my heart pounding for the last hour. His office was calm compared to the chaos outside. A quiet space with tall windows and shelves filled with neat rows of documents. When I walked in, Daniel was already waiting for me with a folder so thick it looked like it had been growing all morning. He gestured for me to sit. I ran a deeper search, he said. Emails, bank transfers, scanned documents. All roads lead back to her. I pressed my palms together tightly. What's the worst of it? His voice softened, like he wished he didn't have to tell me. She didn't stumble into this. She planned it. She used the revoked will, created a fake version of your signature, and moved the money through a shell business she opened 2 months ago. I stared at the papers spread across his desk. There was something painful in seeing the truth in ink. The lies were no longer whispers or hints. They were printed, signed, dated, and undeniable. Daniel slid one paper toward me. This is the buyer statement. They thought the cottage belonged to her. I swallowed hard. I never thought she'd go this far. He leaned forward. She's done small harm to you before. When people get away with little harm, they learn they can attempt bigger ones. His words felt too true. After reviewing everything, I took a deep breath. I'm going to her house. Daniel nodded. Take the folder. But listen carefully. Stay calm. Let her talk. Let her reveal more. We'll need every piece. I promised him I would. But inside, I wasn't sure what kind of calm I could offer my sister now. When I reached West 73rd Street, my heart wasn't racing the way it usually did around Melissa. Instead, I felt something colder, something steady. Her townhouse was beautiful on the outside. Tall white doors, potted plants, a polished brass knocker. A home built on elegance, image, and money she always seemed to have but never earned. I rang the bell and waited. For a moment, I thought she might answer herself, but the door opened to reveal Eric, her husband. The sight of him shocked me. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were tired, his shoulders slumped like he hadn't slept. Evelyn, he said quietly, I figured you'd come. Something in his voice made me pause. Gone was the cheerful, polished man I had seen at holiday dinners. This Eric looked like a truth he had tried to hold inside had finally cracked him open. He stepped aside and motioned for me to enter. I walked into a living room that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Cream furniture, silver frames, polished floors. Everything perfect. Everything cold. Melissa's not home yet, he said. But we need to talk. I sat on the couch, bracing myself. He sat across from me and rubbed his forehead like a man carrying a secret too heavy. I found out what she did, he said. All of it. The forged will. The fake signature. The account she opened. I heard her talking on the phone last night. She was laughing about it. I felt my jaw tighten. Laughing? He nodded, eyes dim. She thought she could get away with it. Not just because she's clever, but because the family always lets her. I stared at him for a moment. And you? He held up a small flash drive and placed it on the coffee table. She recorded everything on this. Emails, scans, notes, even a voice message she didn't delete. I can't stay married to someone who steals from her own sister. I won't protect her from the truth. My breath caught. I hadn't expected him to pick my side. For years, Melissa had been the sun in our family sky, and I had been treated like the shadow. But here he was, handing me the truth without hesitation. My loyalty is to what's right, he said quietly, not to her lies. I picked up the flash drive, feeling its tiny weight. Thank you, Eric. There was no more to say. When Melissa finally walked through the door an hour later, she didn't greet me. She stopped dead in her tracks the moment she saw Daniel's folder open on the table. Her face paled, then tightened, then curled into something ugly. What is this? She snapped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I didn't react the way she expected. It's everything you did, I said softly. And it's over. She began throwing excuses into the air like someone tossing handfuls of dust, hoping it would blind me. You're overreacting. You always make things bigger than they are. I was going to tell you. It's just property, Evelyn. Just property. Those two words told me more about her than all the documents combined. My grandmother's voice whispered again in my memory. Silence is not surrender. It is a blade. I stood slowly and looked her in the eyes. You're going to tell the truth, I said. And you're going to do it in writing. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Her golden world was cracking. And she knew it. 2 days later, I found myself walking into Daniel West's office again, my step steady, even though my heart was heavy with everything that had unfolded. The sky outside was gray, almost silver, like the city itself had paused to watch what would happen next. When I entered the conference room, Melissa was already there. She sat stiffly in one of the leather chairs, her pale pink coat draped behind her like a throne she no longer deserved. Right beside her sat her lawyer, a man who looked like he regretted taking her case the moment he saw the evidence. Melissa's face was tight, almost trembling, but not with fear. She was furious. Furious that she had been caught. Furious that her world was no longer bending in her direction. Furious that I had dared to stand up in a way she had never expected. I sat across from her, placing my folder on the polished wooden table. The room felt cold, heavy with tension. A moment later, the door opened again, and Eric stepped inside. He didn't sit with her. He sat next to me, and that alone made her eyes narrow, her jaw tighten, and her fingers grip her purse hard enough to leave marks on her skin. Daniel entered last, calm as always. He carried another stack of papers and a flash drive. Without rushing, he took his seat at the head of the table. Well, he said, opening the meeting with the calm tone of someone who already knew how this would end. Thank you all for coming. I've reviewed the documents, recordings, and transfers. Based on this, I submitted a request for an emergency financial freeze yesterday evening. Melissa's head snapped toward him. A what? A freeze, Daniel said evenly. The $640,000 from the sale of the cottage is now locked. You cannot move, withdraw, or hide any of it until the investigation is complete. You can't do that, she shouted, her voice echoing off the glass walls. Eric looked at her with a quiet firmness I had never seen from him before. He can. And he should. Her eyes widened as someone had slapped her. She shook her head at him, not in disbelief, but in betrayal, as if he were the one who had committed a crime. Daniel didn't flinch. He simply began laying out documents one by one, sliding them across the table toward her lawyer. These are the emails she sent to the fake buyer. These are the scans of the revoked will. And these, he tapped the flash drive, are recordings of her explaining exactly how she planned the forgery. Her lawyer leaned forward, reading quickly, his eyebrows drawing together deeper with every line. You could almost see him calculating the mess she had created. After a long moment, he placed the papers down and exhaled heavily. This, he said to her, is not something we can fight. Melissa's face twisted. You're giving up on me? Just like that. Your own words are on these recordings, the lawyer replied. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud. She slammed her hand on the table. It's not fair. She always exaggerates things. She's doing this to ruin my life. Her voice was shrill, shaky, a blend of panic and outrage. It was the first time in years she couldn't charm her way out of a consequence. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. Her lawyer turned to Daniel. What exactly do you want? Daniel didn't hesitate. A full confession, signed and notarized. A statement acknowledging the forgery, the false will, and the theft of the property. Once that is complete, we will proceed to restore the cottage to its rightful owner. Melissa stared at him in horror, then swung her gaze to me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I met her eyes calmly.
No.
I'm choosing myself for once. Her mouth opened like she wanted to hurl another excuse, another lie, another manipulation. But nothing came out. Her face crumpled, and small tears began to gather in her eyes. But they were not tears of regret. They were the tears of someone who finally realized she would not escape this with a soft landing. Her lawyer leaned toward her and whispered urgently. I couldn't catch the words, but I could see the result. Melissa's shoulders slumped, her fingers trembled, and her eyes dropped to the table in defeat. This is your only option, her lawyer said quietly, almost apologetically. If we don't negotiate now, you'll face criminal charges. A long silence stretched through the room, the kind that feels like it presses against your chest, the kind that forces truth to settle. Finally, with a hand that shook harder than I had ever seen, Melissa picked up the pen Daniel handed her. She stared at the confession document for a long moment, maybe hoping for a hidden escape, maybe wishing she could rewrite the world the way she always had. But she couldn't.
Not this time.
Her perfect handwriting wavered as she signed her name at the bottom of the page. When it was done, she set the pen down with a soft, broken sound. She didn't look up.
She didn't speak.
She just stared at her clenched hands like the reality of her choices was sinking in at last. I stood slowly, the weight in my chest lifting for the first time in weeks. When I walked to the window and looked out at the cold New York streets, I felt my lungs open fully. The air felt clean, sharp, honest. Daniel stepped out with me after a few minutes. You'll get the cottage back, he said. The law will handle the rest. His voice held reassurance, but to me, it felt like something larger. A door swinging open after years of being stuck. A door to freedom. A door to myself. And for the first time in a long time, I stepped through it. 3 months passed before everything was formally restored to my name. 3 long, strange months filled with paperwork, hearings, signatures, and truths that could no longer be hidden under polite family smiles. When the final legal document arrived in the mail, stamped and sealed, confirming that the cottage in Norfolk, Europe, was mine again, I held it in my hands for a long time. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried not only the house but also every moment that led to this point. The betrayal, the silence, the evidence, the confession. I sat at my kitchen table in Boston, America, staring at the document as morning light spilled across the surface. I expected to feel victorious. I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt something softer, almost fragile. Relief, yes, but also a quiet ache. Winning did not erase what had been done. Justice, even when it arrives, still carries the outline of the wound. I booked a flight to Europe that same week. I needed to see the cottage with my own eyes, not on paper. I needed to stand in the place my grandmother had loved so deeply, to decide with my own heart what its future should be. When I arrived, the sky was pale blue, the kind my grandmother used to describe as ice clear. The cottage stood at the edge of a small field, its stone walls weathered but steady, the ivy reaching across the stones like fingers holding a memory in place. The little blue front door, the one she painted herself when she was 62, was still bright, still welcoming, still hers. I walked through the rooms slowly. The wooden floors creaked softly under my steps. I touched the kitchen counter where she used to roll dough for Sunday pastries. I opened the window where she used to watch the birds. Every part of the house whispered pieces of her voice, pieces of her warmth. But at the same time, I felt something else, the shadow of what my sister had tried to do. The weight of stolen trust. The echo of forged signatures. A bruise that had faded, but not forgotten. Standing in the living room, I realized something that surprised me. I loved this place, but I no longer belonged to it. The betrayal had threaded itself into these walls, and no matter how beautiful they were, I knew I couldn't shape my future here. So I made a decision that even Melissa could never have predicted. I sold the cottage. Not in anger, not as revenge, but because letting go is also a form of strength. The sale went smoothly, and within 2 months I received £510,000. Enough to give myself a fresh start, far away from the shadows my family cast over me. When I returned to America, I didn't go back to Boston. Instead, I drove south until I reached Savannah, a place I had only visited once on a spontaneous weekend trip but had never forgotten. Warm breezes, slow mornings, homes with long porches, and soft colors. Something about it felt gentle, healing. I found a small white house on a quiet street with a magnolia tree in the front yard. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something loosen in my chest, like this was the first space in years that carried no history, no hurt, no expectations. I paid for the house in full. For the first time in my life, I owned something untouched by anyone's lies or fingerprints. Something entirely mine. With the remaining money, I opened a tiny design studio downtown. I named it Quiet North Design after my grandmother, who always taught me that quiet strength could guide a person better than loud noise ever could. The studio wasn't grand. It wasn't flashy. It had white walls, soft lighting, shelves filled with sketches and fabrics, and a big wooden desk that made me feel grounded every time I sat at it. Clients found me slowly, then steadily. Each project, each design, each step felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. My family reacted in different ways. My mother sent a short message about hoping to move forward, as if forgiveness could be written in 6 words. My father didn't say anything at all. Melissa tried reaching out twice, both messages full of excuses and self-pity, not remorse. I didn't respond. Silence was my answer. Not out of cruelty, but out of choice. The truth was simple. I finally understood that I did not owe anyone access to the peace I had earned. Sometimes, when clients ask about my journey, how I built my studio, how I stayed steady through setbacks, I share only pieces of the truth. I tell them that life once pulled me through a storm, but I walked out of it with clearer eyes. I tell them my grandmother taught me something I now carry like a compass. Silence is strength when used with precision. It wasn't about staying quiet in my suffering. It was about choosing the right moment to speak, the right moment to act, and the right moment to walk away. In the end, I didn't just reclaim a property. I reclaimed myself. I reclaimed my life. And every morning now, when I step into the soft Savannah light and unlock the door to my studio, I feel that truth settle deeper into my bones. No one can steal what I have built for myself. Not anymore.